The Hunger Games Mockingjay Part 2 is the final installment to the Hunger Games series. In this movie, it's the payoff to Part 1. If you thought Part 1 was really boring, well, Part 2 has a bunch of action in it. And a couple times where they're just sitting around talking to each other. It's still kinda slow. So as I mentioned, this is the final one where Katniss is finally going into the Capitol, storming that place, and going to try to assassinate President Snow. Unfortunately, there are a couple pods, as they call it, which is basically just a bunch of death traps set up around different parts of the Capitol that are gonna try to kill them. Plus, there are people everywhere, and there's these things called mutts that are like in the sewers or something that are pretty scary or something. Just to give you a little history with me in the Hunger Games, I really enjoyed the first Hunger Games movie. Though it has a lot of shaky cam that really drove me nuts, I thought it was a good movie. Catching Fire, I thought vastly improved upon the first Hunger Games movie, and it is my favorite Hunger Games movie. Mockingjay Part 1, I think it gets a lot of hate, and I can understand it because it is a lot of downtime and talking, but I still really did enjoy it. I don't like it as much as the first two Hunger Games movies though, and finally, Part 2 is out, and I was really excited for this one because it looked like this was the one where there's going to be a lot of action sequences, like there's not going to be any more slow parts, it's just, let's get to the action, and there is more action in this movie than the first movie. However, it's a little disappointing as well. You gotta understand, I was hyped for this movie. Like, seeing the trailers, I was like, yes, this is the movie that looks like it's gonna be the best one. It's not, though, and in my opinion, it might be my least favorite? However, the performances are still really good. Jennifer Lawrence is still great as Katniss Everdeen. I really like her, and she does a good job in this movie. She has like a couple emotional parts as well that I thought she did really good in. Unfortunately, the love triangle is still there, and this is the movie where it feels like an actual love triangle, and it is present in the other three movies. However, this is the one where the love triangle shines. In fact, there's a scene where Gale and Peeta have a little conversation about Katniss, and speaking of Gale, he was still really good in this movie. Liam Hemsworth did a pretty good job, and Josh Hutcherson gave the best performance he's ever given in a Hunger Games movie, in my opinion, and partially it has to do with him being a little nuts, because if you haven't seen Mockingjay Part 1, the Capitol kind of messed with his brain, so he's a little, you know, binky bonky, and I thought he actually delivered a pretty good performance, and he might be my favorite actor in the whole movie, honestly. And President Snow, he's still a pretty interesting villain. I really liked him in this movie. However, there's something that happens that I just wasn't completely satisfied with, and that's the big thing with me. It's just, the performances for all these characters are great, it's just the characters don't have a lot of time to shine. For example, Finnick. He is a really good character, and in this movie, I was looking forward to seeing him again, and Sam Claflin, that's the guy who plays him, right? Probably. He did a good job in this movie, but I wasn't completely satisfied with this character because of reasons I won't spoil. Haymitch is my favorite character out of the entire Hunger Games series. In this movie, Haymitch has about like 4 or 5 very short scenes, and that was kind of disappointing because he was the comedic relief, and even though this movie is a lot darker and I guess the comedic relief isn't really that necessary, it still would have been really cool to see more of Haymitch. President Coin, played by Julianne Moore especially, there's something revealed about her character that I won't spoil, but it just kind of felt off, mainly because we were just introduced to this character in the last movie, and if you're going by book, she was introduced in the same book, and there wasn't really a lot of build-up to this reveal of her character. I'm not going to spoil it, but it's kind of important. So when it kind of starts to happen, I was like, oh, okay, don't know that much about you from the last one. Don't really know much about you from the past either. Okay. And Elizabeth Banks as Effie. Whoa, she was barely in this movie. Like, she shows up, like, once near the end of the movie, I think, once or twice. Like, holy crap! However, there is one person, Philip Seymour Hoffman. This can be excused because, you know, he died. So, he has an excuse because he was dead. Rest in peace, Philip. You're amazing. But from the amount of scenes that he did had, he was still really good. Love you, Philip. So bummed that you're gone. That was kind of depressing. Speaking of not being really satisfied, the end of this movie really didn't satisfy me, mainly because a bunch of stuff starts to happen in the third act where I was just like, time out. Where is all of this coming from? I really honestly do feel like the last third of this movie just changed everything, and it really did just put me off of the entire thing. I'm pretty sure this happened in the book because it's the ending of the movie, so of course it happens in the book. So maybe a bunch of the book fans were disappointed by this ending also, and then you see this ending in the movie, and it's still disappointing to them. And for a movie lover who hasn't read the books, it's really disappointing to me. Just a bunch of stuff started to happen where I was just like, no, wait, stop, no, wait. And of course the ending that kind of drags on. I thought it was going to end, okay, you're going to end here, and then, oh, we have one more very unnecessary scene for you right now. And I was like, oh, just wrap up. And that honestly really does depress me because I've been a fan of the Hunger Games movies ever since 2012. And now getting an ending that really didn't satisfy me is just depressing. I was hyped for this movie. The action scenes. There are action scenes in this movie, and they are very good. And they are very loud also. Like, all of a sudden there's guns firing, and I'm like, oh, geez, wow. Like, they are very loud, like, very, very well done sound effect and stuff, because it was very loud. However, there is still downtime. There are still slow moments, especially in the first 20 to 30 minutes of this movie. There's a bombing that takes place, and you kind of want to see this bombing, but all of a sudden, oh, a conversation between Katniss and Gale watching the bombing from a safe distance. That's what you wanted to see. No, it's not! I want to see action! I just went through an entire first part of talking. One action scene that had shaky cam, and one really very cool suspenseful scene, actually. This movie was supposed to give us all of the actions, and you're not giving us a lot. Why? There is a really good action scene involving, like, these white creatures called mutts that were very cool, but when it's over, it's like, wait, that's it? Did those things really just show up to give us one suspenseful scene? Really? Of course. At first I was like, alright, these things are actually pretty threatening. I like them. And then they're gone after the scene ends, and it's like, oh, okay, so yay! However, I can't hate this movie because it's not a bad movie. It's just it has a lot of disappointing elements for me. I like the performances. Whenever there's action, it's really cool. And it doesn't have shaky cam. It's actually very well filmed and directed and all that, and that's very cool. However, there are some moments that still feel slow, like part 1. The ending is where it basically just kind of crumbles apart, and some endings to these characters I wasn't very satisfied with. So I'm gonna give The Hunger Games Mockingjay Part 2 a B-. I was really hoping that this movie would be my new favorite, but unfortunately, it's not. But who cares, you know? They're still good movies, it's just they all have disappointing stuff, I guess. Except Catching Fire, because that is really good. But if you saw Mockingjay Part 2, which you probably did because this review is really late, leave in the comments below what you thought of it. And I'm gonna have a review for The Good Dinosaur and the Captain America Civil War trailer. Yas! Thank you guys Thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe. I'm Jackson Fulcher. See you guys next time.